Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday. It's like the ninth Tuesday in a row, it feels like. Good morning, Mr. Christos. How are you?
I am good, sir. I am good. It's Friday. I'm exhausted, by the way. It's
Yeah, me
been
too.
so much this week, and we're even debating whether we should be doing the stream this morning or not, right? But I think people need some distraction, and I need a distraction. I need 2 hours of solid technical work. Plus, we're having so much on our plate right now. Like the next few weeks are going to be insanely busy for us.
Yeah.
Conferences, events, internal work, projects, it's just all up in the air. So November is just an insane month. I don't know how we managed to line that up, but
poor,
anyway,
poor planning.
I know. Obviously, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to understand that we're very bad at planning. Thank God that we got Hannah to help us out, our third member in the team.
Yeah.
So that's where we are today. But you know
Yeah.
what? We got .NET Conf next week, and we got some killer demos to show. And I suspect that some of these will also come back to the show because they're so interesting. But I hope we can see you all on .NET Conf next
Yeah,
week.
I think .NET Conf will be fun. I think because we're doing what, 4 demos. It's essentially,
It's just demos.
hey,
Yeah.
here's a demo of a thing that's going to happen. It's really cool. Look at it work. Hey, if you want to see how it worked, come and watch us because we get half an hour, half an hour
Yeah,
for 4 demos.
30 minutes to do 4 demos. Also, I remember the team reached out to us and said, "Hey, can you send us your slides?" And we're like, "We don't have any slides. It's just demos.
Yeah.
What kind of slides would you
Well,
let the code speak?"
I
Right?
will be honest. After seeing the purple Calibri font on the slides, I'm glad we don't have any slides because it was pretty painful to look at. So
Ah, yeah, we have one slide that talks about the 45 show. How about that?
yeah, we've got 3 slides, and one of them is about, hey, come and watch us do this. Come and watch us do this for real if you want to actually learn how to do it. So well,
Well,
that's cool
there's
though.
no chance. Dude, there's no chance in 30 minutes you can even show one demo in depth, right? It will be super hard to go behind the scenes. So, from my perspective, it's almost like a teaser of all the things that you can do with identity when it
Yeah,
comes to .NET and DevOps. And then come and watch the show. So, we'll show you exactly how to do it step by step.
yeah,
We got Terraform, we got GitHub Actions, we got MSI, we got .NET 5, we got Key Vault, I love Key Vault, ARM templates. What am I missing? Working outside of Azure and still using MSI, which we'll be demoing today, actually. So we're stealing
yep,
away from our thunder, but we love it so much that we're excited and we'll talk about it.
yep,
It's gonna be exciting. Plus,
yeah.
we're doing the exact same thing on the same morning at Build Stuff, the conference from Europe. So
Oh,
we'll
it's
be
all on the
doing it
same
twice.
day. Oh,
Yeah.
it's gonna be. Sounds like it's gonna be a bit of a circus next week, but that's okay.
Oh yeah. We have a big circus next week. It's gonna be lovely. But we're taking Thanksgiving off. So if you guys were expecting to see us on the Thanksgiving week, then please be aware that we're not gonna have any streams happening. I think so. Did I screw up my planning as well? Let me check our calendar.
No, I don't. I don't think there's. I don't. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing for Thanksgiving, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
we're off. Yeah,
I'm
we're
pretty
off.
sure being here isn't on that list. I mean,
I do
maybe
have. Yeah, go on.
we could always just do. We could always do a Thanksgiving show and just. I don't know.
Like a
Just
special Friday one.
we could load test Azure AD and see how many tokens we can get to flow forth from the Azure AD token cornucopia. I don't
But
know.
yeah, we're off. I don't have any guests. I don't have any shows scheduled on our calendar, so we're good. But we also have some really exciting people coming to the show as well towards the end of the month. Oh,
Cool.
also we have multi-tenancy next week, next Monday, and
Nice.
then we have Kotlin on Friday. We're doing Kotlin with Azure AD B2C, by the
Oh,
way.
that'll be fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've had quite a few questions about multi-tenancy, so that'll be a good thing to get into
correct.
next week.
And then on the 16th, we also have notifications with our friend Claude Dubois. So
It's
he's
kind of
coming.
the it's
Mhm.
kind of the I think multi-tenancy is like one of those hidden
Yes, it's a hidden
difficult
beast.
difficult to understand hidden gems that's built into
Mhm.
Azure AD. So if you want your app to be used by the hundreds of millions of users that are in Azure AD total,
Yep.
multi-tenancy is the way to go. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that one on
Yeah.
Monday.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of interesting guests and topics. We're getting somebody from the Azure CLI to come as well later in the month. We got One off B2C as well on Random Wednesday show because we're shooting with somebody from Australia, if I remember correctly. So it's going to be at a crazy time, at a crazy day. Like
Nice.
November is super busy. We're really excited with what we have to show you guys.
Yeah,
So,
let's just hope the election doesn't drag into next week because I won't be able to
oh God,
focus.
yes, man. Let it be over today, and we can move on with our lives.
This week has been exhausting, so I'm uh, I'm hoping for a remedy soon. So today, so Monday, we talked some about service principles.
We
Um,
tried to. We tried, and then our friend Agent Wildfire came over and took over the show, and we were just spectators there.
yeah, it was sort of like a physical raid. He raided our channel and took it over, and
Cool.
kind of unexpectedly, but that's
Hey,
okay.
we still love you, Agent Wildfire. Don't feel bad about it.
So anyway, so to kind of finish what we talked about Monday, we talked a lot about MSI and whatever. So we're gonna back up a little bit, talk about service principles in Azure and what they mean and how they work, and then talk about why they're cool, but also why doing them on your own is bad because you kind of
Yes.
you end up having to deal with secrets and materials that you don't want to have to deal with. And then I think, depending on how much time we have, I'm going to try to build a. We're going to try to build a new Azure Identity token credential that uses hybrid MSI, that uses a local MSI. So
Oh,
it's going to be
nice.
an interesting show.
So why would that be different to the default token credential that we get?
Because the local MSI behaves slightly differently from the regular Azure hosted MSI.
Interesting.
Yep.
Maybe we can commit that and send it to the Azure SDKs team.
Yep. And then they will do exactly what they do with all of our other contributions and put them directly into the bit bucket.
Oh, come on, man.
I'm just kidding. So
We love the
anyway,
Azure SDKs. Yeah, we're closely related due to all the stuff that are
I
happening
love them.
across the board.
I wish that we were half as good as what they're doing. So anyway, um, what we've got, I'm going to build just a really quick and dirty console app. There's nothing super
Yes.
exciting about this console app. In fact, I already started on it a little bit ago.
Is it .NET
Um,
5? Is it
no,
.NET 5?
no, it's .NET 3.1.
Oh, come on,
Well,
man.
.NET
Should be
5
selling this.
is A, unavailable, and B, it's not LTS.
Ah, pff.
You know, I
Well,
mean,
you're
I don't
not
know
living
about you,
dangerously enough.
I don't want to go upgrade code every 6 months. So I'll wait for .NET 6 in like what,
Wait, I think
November?
we're. You're skipping .NET 5 altogether?
I mean, I won't skip it, but I'm not gonna like, I don't know. I'll stick to 3.1 until 6 is out, unless something really really awesome comes out in 5. How about that? I mean,
They have some really interesting features, like the entry point to .NET to .NET to console apps, for example. The way they can spin up your main is different. They have a whole heap of performance improvements, garbage collection.
I don't doubt that. I'm just saying, if I'm going to build something, chances are I will build something for a few weeks or work on something for a few weeks, maybe a couple months, and then
Right.
it needs to run untouched for a while. And I would just rather know that it can run untouched for like 2 years before I have to go reopen it again.
So
And
apparently, the whole main method can be omitted in the application. It can be as simple as just running system.console.write or whatever.
yeah,
Call whatever you want. That's insane.
that's cool.
It
Anyway,
is.
so no, it's not .NET 5. It's .NET Core 3.1,
Fine.
which is the
Ancient
latest.
stuff.
The
It's
latest.
almost like it's 2018 now.
It's the latest released .NET. .NET Core. So we have a very simple console app here. Okay.
Yep.
It's like 50 lines, and we've got some credentials here. So and you'll notice, in fact, there's even a credential here, right? So we've got a tenant ID, a client ID, and a client secret. And these are
the client secret.
yeah, and these are just right in my code, right? And it's using this client secret credential. Client secret credential is what Azure Identity uses for talking to Azure Storage, to Azure Resource Manager, to all the different Azure Key Vault, all the different things you would talk to Azure with. The Azure Identity Library handles most of that work for going and getting the tokens, so you don't have to go do that on your own. And there are lots of different ones available. So there's the client secret one, which we're going to use to start. There's the Azure CLI one, which is picked up from whatever it is that you're using. Like if you've got the CLI installed locally, it uses Azure CLI for that. And then we've got a managed identity credential. And each one of these credentials sort of for a different purpose. So a managed identity, like we talked about last week, a managed identity is an identity that exists in Azure, right?
Yeah.
And is typically assigned to an Azure resource. It's called a system assigned managed identity. And it's a way to give permission to a VM or to a web app, as opposed to requiring a user to be there, which is super helpful for a lot of reasons that we'll get into in a little bit. So anyway, we're creating some credentials, and then right now we're just using our service principal credential. And all this is doing is going and printing a list of resources in Azure in my subscription. That's all it's doing.
So how are you passing the credential?
Well, so right now...
Are you doing... are you using... So there is a chain token credential that wraps around all these individual ones and then tries to call them one at a time.
Yep, or using that. Just using a client secret credential for the moment.
Oh, so why do you have the Azure CLI and Managed Identity credential?
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
So we've, in fact, I'll even comment these out so they are not.
Yeah, I was going to say because that will be confusing, right?
So they're not.
Also, we'll try to do and fail. So let me. And while you're doing that, I'll try to find a link to the token credentials for the Azure SDKs so people can understand what we're doing and follow along.
So if I want to connect to an Azure resource like a storage, like Resource Manager, and we talked a lot about this with ThrazMan, because that's what ThrazMan does, right? Is it connects to Azure resources and does things to them. Yep. But this isn't limited to just Azure stuff. This could be, you could use this with Azure SQL, which I've actually got a demo of that we can look at. Well, you could use this with talking to your own APIs. So if you've built APIs that are secured by Azure AD, say to run the back end of your application or to do imports or something, those APIs can also be used with client secrets. So it's a pretty cool mechanism, especially for app-only stuff. So if you don't have a user, if it's a headless app, if it's a service, a console app that's running somewhere, a scheduled task, we can use what's called a service principal to go and do that without requiring a user to interactively be present, right?
Right.
So a user doesn't come here and type in a username and password to sign into an app. Instead, this user is not present, and the app is acting on its own behalf and just doing things on its own, right?
Yep.
So we've got our client secret credential here, and it's got a tenant ID, which is just my Azure AD directory, right? So this is just the Azure AD directory ID.
Should we also jump on the Azure Active Directory just to show what kind of permissions and stuff you've set up there?
Yep, we'll go look at it. And we've got a client ID, and this is the application ID or service principal ID.
Yep.
Which is just sort of like the identifier. It's just sort of like the identifier of the application specifically. So in this case, this identifier is linked to this app, which is a console app called Azure Reader. And then lastly, we have the secret. And we got a question too about smart card authentication is one of the most secure. So smart card authentication is quite secure for the purposes of user auth. And essentially there's on the smart card itself, there's a key data and certificate data, and that is what's used to validate the user. When you're using service principals in Azure, or when you're using a service principal with Azure AD, there are two ways that you can authenticate. One of them is with a client secret, which is what we're going to go do right now. The other one is with a certificate. So if you in production, of course, we'd suggest that you use a certificate with your service principal. And the way that works is the certificate is used to essentially sign a bit of data to say this came from service principal ABC, and then that's what's sent upstream to Azure AD. Most of the SDKs handle the client certificates. In fact, I think there's one for Azure Identity called, client certificate, which is a client certificate credential, and that's going to pretty much do the same thing. Tenant ID, client ID, and then the path to the client certificate yourself. So it is, and yes, Seppi, you're absolutely correct. It is a terrible idea to hard code a client secret. Never hard code
Yeah,
string
that shouldn't be
secret.
there. It's only for the purpose of the demo. If you have to use a client secret, you should be using some like key vault with MSI to pull the information across. But again, you need an MSI to make it happen. So we'll show you how to do it.
Yeah. So by the end of today, there won't be any secrets in our code, and in fact, as the developer, you won't have any secrets to manage, which is super cool. But
secret-less develop.
But if you're doing this today and you want to use a service principal, this is the most basic, most straightforward way to go out and get it done. Yep. The problem is this. And if you've got something that's running on-prem, for example, running in your data center, running in another cloud, this is the only way to do it, is using a secret or using a certificate, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not running in Azure, your option is to use a client secret or a certificate.
Yep.
And so keep in mind, the whole point of today is to get away from ever having a secret in our code, right? So this is how we would do it normally, right? Sean tells us that it's a learned thing. It's learned from my parents. My parents hard-coded secrets, and thus I continue to hard-code secrets.
Yeah, we had secrets on the fridge, everywhere, stuck with post-its. It's awful around the house.
Secrets everywhere, as far as you can see.
Secrets everywhere, yeah.
So anyway, so we've got a hard-coded secret, this is a terrible idea. This is a terrible idea. Don't ever hard-code.
Unfortunately, we see a lot of customers, a lot of developers trying to get things quickly off the ground, and they will go with this option. And unfortunately, this can really compromise your security, especially as many service principals will have a lot of permissions on Azure. It can cause a lot of damage. So we want to encourage people not to do that.
And even if it's in a config file, that's still not very good, right? Because you still got a config file that has your client secret sitting in it, right?
And let's not talk about the fact that developers should not have access to secrets, especially production secrets, because many times we've seen people maliciously using that information to cause damage, sometimes accidentally, and sometimes if their machine gets compromised, it can cause problems. Sorry for cutting you off, Chip.
No, it's okay. So this is a bad idea, which is why we're talking about it first, because while it is a bad idea, it is also the most common thing that we see. In fact, some of our docs even reference using client secrets. So we're going to talk about the bad way, and then we're going to move into the good way. So essentially, the client ID and the client secret, this is essentially a username and password. You can think of it as being a username and password for a service account, for an Azure AD service account. Because this is it. If you use a certificate, of course, you're going to use a certificate instead of the string, but essentially it's a username and a password. So we've got our credential, this normal service principal credential, and we're going to send that into this application, and all it's going to do is just go and print. All it's going to do is just go print the resource groups that are part of that subscription, right?
Perfect.
That's all it's going to do.
Yep.
So I'm just going to do a .NET run here. And that's going to run this code. And it's going to go run through all the subscriptions, and then here we go. So here's my subscription, and here's my resource group, and it's telling me what region it's in.
Sweet.
What the app is doing itself is really immaterial. The fact that it's printing this out is just enough to say, hey, this thing has access to my subscription. So,
it worked, right?
Yep. So how does it have access to my subscription? So let's get the Azure portal up here. And we'll go take a quick look over there at what's going on, right? So
JP is so excited he put .NET Conf as his homepage, counting the minutes.
No, I just was figuring out if that purple Calibri was standard or if somebody had deviated. So let's go look at my subscription. So here's my subscription. So if you're in the Azure portal, you can just type subscriptions and get there. You can click the little side menu and it'll be in there somewhere. So let's open up this subscription. This is the same ID that you would have seen a few minutes ago. And let's look at IAM. So IAM is Identity and Access Management. This is where we assign apps to be able to go and do things and users and whatever in our things, right?
Yep.
So we've got our app here called Azure Reader App, and you'll notice that Azure Reader App is a reader on this resource. This resource being the subscription, and that flows down. That means that this app has permission to read the subscription and everything inside of it. So we can read all of the resources in Azure. Can't necessarily read the data, but we can read the resources. So what's there?
And did you create that using the CLI PowerShell, or just did you go on the portal and create a new app registration and assign the permissions here?
I just created a service principal with RBAC, but you could also just create an application, and there are tons of documents on how to do that. So you just create an application. Right. That application will have that app will have certain fields of certain pieces of data that are available, and you just use that to go and do a role assignment. But there are lots and lots of different articles on how to do that, so it's pretty straightforward. So Azure.
I'm adding a blog post now.
Okay. Azure Reader app is a reader on a subscription, right? So that's cool. That makes sense. That's pretty clear. So we've got an Azure Reader app. It's a reader. It's going to be able to print our resource groups. And if we go look at this subscription and we look at the resource groups in this subscription, we should see the same
ones that we saw printed, right?
That we saw printed over here. And there
Very nice.
Go. So we've got, oh my, that got really small. We've got, storage, MSAL, JS, blob. There, that one is. It's in East US. Cloud Shell storage. That's in here somewhere. So yeah. So we're seeing the data that's in that subscription as we would expect. The problem with this app is this. Line 17 is terrible, and we don't want line 17 in there at all, right? In fact, you could go and take this client ID and secret right now and go and query my subscription and see it, right? So we don't want this client secret in here at all anymore, right?
Correct.
Yep. Instead, we want to use an alternative. So in a standard way, we have this thing called Managed Service Identity. Managed Service Identity means that when we are running in Azure, we can, instead of doing this ourselves, we let Azure handle what that client secret is. It handles rotating the client secret, and in fact, we never see it, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to pull up a VM we've got over here in my subscription, and it's called Normal MSI VM. And the reason it's a normal MSI VM is because I haven't even logged into it yet. It's literally just a Windows virtual machine, but this works in Linux too. It doesn't matter if it's Windows or Linux. It's just a normal Windows virtual machine. There's nothing exciting about it. There's nothing. I haven't made any changes to it or anything. All I did was create the VM, and I created it early because who knows how long it was going to take to create. So there's an identity tab here on the side of your VM, right? And the identity tab, when we turn it off, there's no MSI enabled. When we turn it on, there is one. So we have one right here. And this is our object ID. Now note the object ID because it's important for later. So
there's a question or maybe a comment that we should do here. MSI works for both Windows and Linux VMs, correct, Mr. JP? Yes. So it's not limited to just Windows. In fact, we love Linux, and over 50% of our workloads are Linux, or is Linux.
Yep.
Workload is Linux, right?
It also Managed Identity is available for VMs. It's available for App Service, which is sort of like our web service platform. So if you want to host a web app, you can just host a web app, kind of like AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So Managed Identity is available for a virtual machine, for App Service, which is web apps, for Azure Container Instances. So you can get a Managed Identity for a container instance, which is our sort of, if you want to call it serverless containers, like it's a container that just runs and we bill you for the container time it runs. And then also in Kubernetes. So we have what's called pod identity in Azure Kubernetes Service, which allows your individual pods to get one of these two. Right, so they can also come in and get a managed identity. So your apps that are running in those pods can then talk to Azure resources or other APIs without having to manage secrets.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add a link to all the services on Azure because it's way more than what I just said or what JP just said. Damn, that's not a good link. What happened there? And it's also like databases and everything else that you want to know that it works, right?
Sorry, say that one more time.
As in, it's not just what services provide managed identity, like VMs and app services, but also which services allow consumption, storage, SQL Server, and other things. So if you have the front end that needs to use the MSI to speak to something else, but the backend also needs to support MSI. So there's a whole heap of lists and services that allow you to do that.
Yeah, so there are two sides to the coin. One side is the resource itself that needs to access something else, the VM, an app service, web app, a container.
Yep.
Those have to be managed identity enabled, which they all have this identity tab, and the identity tab is what lets you enable it. And there's a whole list of services, that support it.
Yep.
The service that you're talking to, so if you're talking to Key Vault, if you're talking to Azure Storage, if you're talking to your own API, if it's Azure AD protected, meaning it's something that uses Azure AD for sign-in or for access, then managed identity can be used against it. Because a managed identity is largely just a service principal or a service account. The difference is that you don't manage the secret. So you don't have to manage the secret lifetime. The constraint there is that until we finish our talk today, you can only run it in an Azure resource like a VM or a container or a web app. So it's only available in a container or in a web app or in a VM. But by the end of today, that will be false. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about it. So we've got our identity of our VM. So we've got a Windows VM. It's got an identity. This is the service principal ID that's been assigned to it. So let's go ahead and add a role assignment for Azure.
Yep.
So we're going to add a role assignment. And we're going to give this subscription. And we're going to give it reader on the subscription itself. Right?
Yep.
So let's save that. So on my subscription now, it says normal MSI VM was added as a reader for VSE, which is my subscription name, right?
Yep.
So we have, just like we had our service principal, we have this, right?
Yep.
So our VM now has this permission. And if we log into our VM and run it, we should be able to take our console app with us and run it on the VM, but without having any secrets in it, okay? So let's go get connected to it.
SSH?
Huh?
SSH?
That's Windows. Well, RDP. Why not? So let's see. Let me get my...
We're getting a lot of junk for followers. I need to speak to Golness and Brian how we can get access to stop the spam.
Well,
people are spamming us.
I guess it's spam. I guess it's a good problem to have. I don't know.
Well, we don't want to buy followers, though.
No,
we want to earn them. We want to earn your trust.
All right.
How can you ban somebody and I can't ban somebody?
You just have to click the button. Okay.
What button?
Click their name, and then there's a ban button. Okay.
Oh, I was clicking on the wrong thing. Damn it.
So here's our virtual machine that's running in Azure. I have to zoom this in a little bit. Thank you, Sparkfire, by the way, for reporting them as well. So here's our virtual machine. Let's get this to not pop up every time we sign in. And it's just a regular Windows Server 2019 VM. It's nothing, there's nothing wild about it, right? Yes. I have literally nothing installed in this. Let's see, can I zoom this in? Let's get this console window zoomed. And we will do a big font. I don't know, 48. Let's see how that works. I guess I need a new one. There we go. That should be, I hope that's somewhat legible. In fact, it looks a little small. I'll make it just a little bit larger. Let's do 72, because why not? So, here's our virtual machine. Just a regular, standard Windows virtual machine that's running as an Azure VM. So there's nothing too exciting about this VM just yet. So let's take our app and let's copy it up here. And let's run it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment the service principal stuff out. And let's go and enable our MSI credential. Yeah. And we'll call this a normal MSI credential, right? Now, you're going to have to help me here because there's a .NET command to publish a self-contained executable, so I can just take it up there and run it. Do you know what it is?
.NET publish, but I can't remember the full command. It's been a while since I published something. Let's look at the docs.
Okay.
Or you can, I think they can check the command line and see what it offers, but I can't remember. Man, we don't publish. They don't let us near production systems anymore.
I know. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I honestly, yeah, I haven't really done I have not really done one of these in a long time.
You know what? I haven't done any deployment to a production system since 2016, since I joined Microsoft and started working as a PFE. Because, obviously, Microsoft doesn't want to have the liability if you write code for a customer. You can help customers write their code, but it's like this code sample comes with a disclaimer: do not use it in production. Now, if you use it.
Here we go. Publishing is a single binary. That's what I want. So let's see. So that's runtime identifier, which we don't actually need, but publish single file and publish trimmed. Looks like we need those in our property group. So let's go put those in here.
Okay. Did you say .NET 5 right above the statement there?
No, it's a .NET Core 3 preview 5.
Okay. Right.
And then, yeah, you're right. Let's go look at help here and see what .NET Publish help gives us, which I can't read because the window is too small. So let's see here.
Output directory, target framework.
Self-contained. So we want that. And
yeah, I think that overrides the CS Proj file, but it's fine.
It's okay. All right. So .NET Publish self-contained. And output, we'll just do a we'll call it pub. How about that?
Pub sub.
Is that gonna work? Is that gonna work? No, it's not.
What is missing? Ooh.
It is not supported to build or publish a self-contained application without specifying a runtime identifier.
Yeah, runtime.
Which that would be R for runtime.
Yep.
And
I think it's 3.1. .NET, it's net 3.1, if I remember correctly.
No, I think
that one.
It's the runtime identifier itself. Let's go find the one for Windows. So Windows RIDS, Win x64. Yeah, that should be good because that's what we need, right? Win x64. Okay.
Windows 8.1 and Windows 7. Check that out. I guess people still run. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, it looks like it's certainly doing work now.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear the fans turning on my machine. So I know it's doing something.
You're cold. Just spin up Chrome and the .NET build.
It was a little cold here, but it's gotten warm again. So.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
It's supposed to be like 75 today. So. Okay, so we got a new folder called pub. Looks like it's being written. And self-contained. Okay. Output type is exe, so that should be good. So let's see what we get. And then I'm just gonna like quite literally copy and paste our executable up to the VM, and we'll see if it runs.
No CI/CD pipeline? I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, we should do a CI/CD pipeline for our 50 lines of code. Okay. All right. Let's see. Optimizing assemblies for size, which may change the behavior. Okay. Not really what you want to hear, but that's okay.
That's lots of confidence there. Yep.
Which may change the behavior of the app. Please be sure to test after publishing. Okay, so we've got our pub folder. Let's open this up and explore. Here's our.
It also generates a PBD.
No, it's got a PDB and it's got a 40 meg executable.
Wraps the .NET runtime, .NET Core.
Yep.
Runtime.
All right. So let's go put this on. Let's just paste this on the desktop here. Let that copy up. So we're back in our VMs. This is our Azure VM. Now, provided everything went correctly, this VM should essentially output the same thing that we got locally when we're running with a local.
And this VM doesn't have .NET Core installed, right?
This VM has nothing installed except for whatever you get with a bog standard Windows Server VM. There's nothing else on here. So
just to prove the point.
So let's run Azure Reader, and is it going to blow up or is it going to work?
Dun dun dun.
I'm actually super anxious as to whether or not this is going to work now. Look at that. There it is.
Oh, it worked.
Okay, cool. So this used our managed service identity to go and talk to Azure. So, I mean, if we open up...
I'm excited. Let's call it a day. Let's quit while we're winning.
If we open up AppWiz, you'll see there's literally nothing installed on this machine. If we do like .NET isn't there, so we can't list SDKs or anything else. So we just have our own. We have our one little self-contained application. There's literally nothing exciting about it, right?
It's running. What are you talking about?
No, that part's exciting. I mean, the machine itself doesn't have any magic that's happening behind it, right?
It's all in the code.
So the way that managed identity works, this is the one thing that makes this VM unique, is the way that managed identity works is instead of me writing code to manage my client ID and manage my secret like we had in our earlier code, instead, managed identity publishes an endpoint in the VM, right?
Yep.
So at the 169.254 address, .169.254, which is an Azure internal routable address only, in here is an endpoint where you can get all sorts of info about your virtual machine, right? It's called the Instance Metadata Service, and anyone who came from AWS has likely used the Instance Metadata Service before. So let's go pull up those docs so I can get the exact path. Instance Metadata Service. Okay, so the instance Metadata Service gives you a bunch of info on the VM, but it also gives you a bunch of information for getting the tokens that you need to go talk to your downstream service, right?
And this is only available from inside the VM, that endpoint, so you can run it from your local machine.
Yep, that's right. So let's take a look. So this is it. 169.254, 169.254, metadata instance, and then API version, and has some other stuff. And then this is PowerShell. I think curl ships on all these now, so we should be okay. So 254, 169, metadata instance API version 2020-06-01. Let's see what happens. I don't have a header on here, so we need a header, which is metadata, and I believe it's true, but we'll go check. That may not be the best way to do it in curl either. It looks like it's not.
Why do you not copy the command from the docs?
Because it's a PowerShell command.
Oh, well, you have PowerShell installed on the VM.
I guess we'll go do PowerShell instead. All right, fine. We'll do PowerShell instead.
Yes. Slowly, I will convert you. It will happen.
Okay, fine. We'll do PowerShell. Okay, so now we're in PowerShell. Let's take the command. So this is an invoke REST method, which is essentially curl. Metadata header, metadata true, blah, 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 169.254, blah, blah, blah. Metadata instance API version, and it converts it to JSON.
What?
I love how I copied that directly from the docs, and it did not work. So that's okay. We don't have a proxy, so we don't need to worry about it. Okay, so here's all of our info, and yeah, Windows 10 and the Windows 10 versions, they have a curl. They ship with curl now. So here's what we get back from it. So we invoke our REST method, and we just get a bunch of data about the service, right? We get compute, we get what environment it's in, what kind of VM it is, what the resource ID is, and a lot of this is pretty useful when we're talking about different. A lot of this is useful when we're talking about like scripts for onboarding or app deployment or whatever. Being able to know exactly what your resource ID is, all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So you get all this info from the metadata thing. The other thing that we get, however, from the metadata endpoint is there's also an identity endpoint. That's part of that IMDS, that instance metadata service. So here we have managed identity in the metadata service. So let's go to look at acquire an access token. And this even has a command that we can just straight up copy. So we can do curl or we can do PowerShell. I guess since we're already in PowerShell, we might as well do it. So you'll notice it's the same thing. We're calling that 169 address again, and we're calling metadata, but this time we're calling identity, OAuth 2, and then the token endpoint. And there's one extra parameter that we're including, which in this case is the resource. Now, for us, the resource is the application you are trying to access. It's the application for which you need a token. So, so this example uses the Azure Management API. It could be your own API, it could be storage, it could be SQL, it could be any number of different things, right? The only thing that changes is the resource. So the resource ID here is the Azure Management API, which is what we're using, but you could also go find one for another reason. So let's take this over here, and maybe it didn't copy. Let's see. So let's take this command, copy this over, come over in here. Here's our new command. So 169, everything's still the same, except identity OAuth 2 token, resource management.azure.com. So if we hit this, we should get an access token back. And it looks like we do. So here's an access token that we can use to go talk to Azure AD's, or to Azure's management API to list the VMs or list the resource groups.
Yep.
This is exactly what the Azure SDK is doing when we use that managed identity credential. So we don't have to do any of this on our own, but this is exactly what that's doing, right? That managed identity credential. That's exactly what it's doing. It's calling this endpoint with a specific resource to go and get an access token that it then uses to make ongoing calls, right? So this is cool, except it's in a VM that's running in Azure.
Right.
Other things that run as VMs in Azure are things like Windows Virtual Desktop, which is kind of like what we talked about a little bit.
Monday.
Well, we talked about it a lot on Monday, but we didn't actually see it on Monday. So I'm going to open up Remote Desktop. And because Windows Virtual Desktop nodes are essentially just virtual machines in Azure, they can also have managed identity turned on for them, which is really cool. Now you start thinking about like a dev box. Like if I'm building a dev box for new developers who are coming on board, and everybody's working at home, and so we can't, and supply chains are all screwed up, so I can't ship them a laptop, for example. Instead, I just have these high-powered VMs that are my developer workstations. Like we've certainly seen, especially some of our larger customers doing that.
Yep.
So here's the VM.
And people may be asking about performance and what is the experience like? Did not AZ Wildfire mention something on Monday about the provisioning of the machines needs to be a specific spec because it provides better UI experience, no lag, and what have you?
He probably did.
Is that correct?
I
think it's the F series. I think he talked about the F series that provide better throughput.
Oh, right.
Yep.
So this VM, this is Windows Virtual Desktop. So my administrator, AZ Wildfire, he set this up for us on Monday. So this is just a normal VM. However, instead of me accessing it like I would an Azure VM, instead I access it through this Remote Desktop app, which looks like this. Which I can't zoom in on it, so it's kind of hard to see. But like this is all the stuff we have for me at work. So if I want to use a virtual desktop at work, I've got one available, and I can go pull it up from different regions or whatever.
Very nice.
Rich has published one desktop for me, and it's just a normal Windows 10 desktop. There's nothing.
We have a question.
Yep.
When using a VM, do you have to worry about firewall, or is it provided by the cloud infrastructure?
So every VM has a firewall available. It's mostly like a network ACL. So it's kind of like saying, I want to allow port 3389 for RDP from this set of IPs. So that's one sort of basic firewall, which is just either allow this port and this IP from this port or this IP. I'll pull it up and we'll take a quick look because it's already right here since I've got the VM right here. So this is the VM that we were just remoted into, and you'll notice I have a yellow exclamation point here because 3389, which is RDP, is allowed from any source, meaning from any IP on the internet. So you could go put this IP in here and try to RDP into my VM that we were just running.
Yep.
This 1392 whatever. You could also drop a public IP entirely. You don't have to use a public IP at all. But while we're here, let's go ahead and change that to just my IP because I don't want anybody being able to get into that. And you can add as many rules here as you need. And the rules are ranked based on priority. So if you want to publish a web app or a website, for example, on this, then we would add a new one for port 80 to the internet or to your company's network range or your house or whatever.
Yep.
So for me, I'm going to do an IP address service tag, and I will use my IP, which I can go get quickly, ifconfig.co. It's a great website if you want to get your IP address and not be inundated with ads. So I'll put my IP address in here, but you can also use a range. So if you're coming from, say, an office or a work site where you've got a long range of IPs, you can put in a whole range, a CIDR range, or anything here. So we're going to allow any. I'm going to allow any because we want TCP and UDP. and then I'll save that up. And now, if you were to try to RDP to this VM, you shouldn't see a login page at all. You shouldn't be prompted for credentials. It's essentially as if it's no longer on the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So this is called a network security group. These are available for any VM, just sort of out of the box. So you can add network security groups, and you can add rules to them, and you can use them on different interfaces, all sorts of different ways to keep an Azure VM off the internet.
Yep.
There are other firewalls that are higher layer, so like layer 7, kind of like an application firewall. So if I was going to publish a web app to the internet, I might be more interested in one of those, something like Azure WAF or Azure Firewall, which is Web Application Firewall, because what those firewalls do is they sort of inspect the traffic and they look for malicious traffic as it comes in, because it's happening at the application layer, so all the way at where the application itself is, rather than coming from somewhere else. So, hey, we got rated.
Hey,
nice.
Lila. We got rated.
Oh, thanks, Layla.
Hey, Lila.
Hey, everybody.
Nice.
Cool. Very fun. Thanks for coming. We're talking about managed service identities, and we took a quick detour on over to Azure firewalls and network security groups. So we're gonna go back to the other one now.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming. Thanks for hanging out. Okay. So right now we got a Windows Virtual Desktop. I opened this using the remote desktop app right here. So this is my dev workspace that my administrator has given me. And because, and I presume, I asked him to, I haven't done this yet, but because he has turned on managed service identity, in theory, we should be able to copy our executable to this VM and have the same thing happen. But just to make sure, before we do all that, let's just go see if managed identity is turned on, and we'll do that by running we'll run our instance metadata service again. Metadata, let's go make sure that it's here. Go and run this command. Get rid of no proxy, since apparently that is, I don't know why that's in our docs, because apparently it is not a part of PowerShell. Not a part of
proxy thing. Yeah, maybe we need to reach out to the guys that the doc and send a pull request.
Something's not right about my IMDS. Looks like it's not working. So if Richard's around, he can help us there. But let's go try our managed identity one anyway, just to see if it works.
I'm worried that if the IMDS is not working, then this might not work as well.
So this is an interesting one. The response content can't be parsed because the Internet Explorer first launch configuration is not complete. Oh, I need use basic parsing at the end. Sorry, that was a me problem. Use basic parsing, and there it is. So it does work.
Oh, that's working.
So we get an access token just like we got on our normal Azure VM. So if I'm a developer and I just started a new company and this is what they give me, the administrators can control what I can and can't see, which is super, super cool. So now I've got an access token that we can use to go and talk to our service. So that's WVD. Nice. So we've looked at three things: using a service principal with code, with a key in the code. Don't want to do that. No secrets in code, no secrets in config if we don't have to. We don't want to do that.
Absolutely.
But it works. As with most things in security, the first thing that people do when something doesn't work is remove all the security and see if that's what the problem is. And sadly, a lot of times that is exactly what happens. So we have done service principles. That was our code at the very beginning that had a secret in it. That's this code from earlier, which has a secret. Luckily, it's commented out now, but it's still in the code. So we don't want to do this, but it does work. So then the next thing we did is we used this managed identity credential, and the managed identity credential works in an Azure VM. It also works in WVD, which is Windows Virtual Desktop. So in this way, if I've got an app like a service that's running or something on a VM that's running in Azure, a Windows VM or a Linux VM, we can use that managed identity to go and talk to our Azure resources. What's really cool about it is we don't have a secret. In fact, you and I as the developers or as the administrators, we don't even have access to the secret. Because the secret is actually a certificate and it's managed by Azure AD. So you never see the secret. You never have to worry about rotating the secret. You never have to worry about that secret being compromised because it's only available on the VM. Right.
Yeah, I've been in companies where people left and they had access to their production systems 2 years after leaving the company.
Yep. So managed identity has been huge. That's a great way to put it too. Simon Engineering, which is a fantastic name, by the way. Yeah, it's like it's like Windows integrated security in a non-domain joined environment, right? You get this concept of a service account that's available just to the VM that identifies the VM itself, and that's what's used for talking to other resources, and it makes it super, super cool. Okay, so those are the three big things we've looked at: using a service principal straight up, and then using a managed service principal, using a managed service identity, both on a normal VM and with WVD.
And running on Azure, by the way. So far, everything that we have running outside our local environment is running on Azure. So MSI is available to these machines one way or another because they're part of the integrated Azure environment. I think the next one is going to be the one that is going to blow your socks off.
Yeah, so the next one is one I'm super excited about. The next one is about doing exactly what we just did on our VM, but instead of having that VM required to be in Azure, that VM's actually going to be running locally here on my machine. And then
I thought you were going to say AWS. I was going, what?
Well, we could do it in AWS too, but I don't know who's going to pay my AWS expenses. So I haven't talked to the right people to get that approved yet. So
let's crowdsource it. How about that?
Who's got an AWS VM we can use for the afternoon? Who's got an EC2 instance? So I'm going to get rid of this one, and let's go back to our VM just for a moment. So this is our Azure VM. We ran our little sample application, right? So our little sample app was just called Azure Reader.
Yep.
And, oh, there it is. So there's our Azure Reader. If we run that again, we should still see our output, which we do. And we don't have any secrets. We don't have a config file. We don't have anything except for just that one executable, right?
Yeah. Self-contained executable with no secrets.
So this VM's running in Azure. Now, let's get rid of this. Now we have, and we can get this out of the way too. I'll go ahead and close some of these other windows before I inevitably click on them and then say, oh, I wonder what that is. Yeah, and as Simon says too, this managed identity is available for a whole host of Azure resources. So it's not just for VMs; it's also for App Service, which includes Azure Functions. And so there are all sorts of different services, Azure Container Instances, all that sort of stuff. But what we're going to do today is we're going to look at doing it on, first we're going to do it on a VM, and then I'm going to try it on my local machine. Because why not, right? I mean,
yes.
When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So
your machine is going to, a non-Azure VM, which is your local machine, is going to use MSI to connect to Azure.
Yep.
Yeah?
That's it. That's exactly what we're going to do. So my local machine and a VM running on my local machine, we'll do both of them. They are both going to connect to Azure resources using a managed identity locally instead of me having to use a service principal locally.
So at this point, people may have a question because if you are using the Azure SDKs, they actually work on your local machine without you having to use a managed identity. They actually take your local account, whether it's Azure CLI or your Visual Studio logged in account or your Visual Studio Code logged in account, and they can use those accounts to connect to Azure services as long as your account has the right permissions. What we're doing here is very different. We're not going to be using our local accounts. We're going to be using an MSI account to authenticate against Azure. So there's a big difference there because people think like you can also have MSI running locally on your machine when you use the Azure SDKs out of the box, but that's not the case. So this is something new that we haven't tried before.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we get a lot of questions about managed service identity locally is because of all of that happens. So when you're developing locally, it falls back to use, say, your Azure CLI credentials or Visual Studio credentials. The problem with those credentials is that they are you. They are signed in as you. And you and I, as users, have far more permissions on our Azure subscriptions than the MSI. So we gave our MSI just reader access. It doesn't have access to delete resources, to blow them up or whatever, create new resources, change security. It doesn't have anything to do with any of that. Because it's set at the managed identity level. But if we ran that exact same code here on my machine, and it was, say, deleting resources, well, those deletions would work because I personally would be who I'm signed in as, and because the SDK attempts to use my credentials otherwise, when nothing else is available, it's going to use that as me. So.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that. Let's go take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to do that for the last hour, and then we'll answer any questions, issues, comments, concerns, and wrap up the show. So we'll be back in 3 to 5 minutes. We're going to try to install MSI locally on my machine and see how it goes.
Perfect. See you all in a bit.
All right. Back in 5. We're back. Now, here we go. It is the same song on a loop. I guess we should make our breaks 2 minutes and 34 seconds because that's how long the the music is. Okay, so let's talk about our local VM. So this is just a Windows 10 dev environment. It's just a normal local Hyper-V VM. So it's running right here on my machine, right?
Yep.
I know the font is small, but we will make it smaller, or we will try to make it bigger. I just used Quick Create and Hyper-V to create this. So if you use Quick Create and Hyper-V locally, you can just create a Windows 10 dev environment, and it downloads everything. And I think it has like Visual Studio and stuff turned on. It's for building UWP apps, which I don't know if anybody does that, but if you wanted to, it's available. But it's just a regular Windows 10 VM. It has Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code baked in.
How often do you use your VMware? Considering that my new machine is arriving next week, finally. Because Dell pinged me the other day. It's like, oh, it's going to be delayed. Damn it. Anyway, it's coming next week, so I'm super excited. The question is, do I install VMware in there for any of the stuff I do? Because I don't want to install Java, Node, Python, and everything else on my main machine.
Well, I never use VMware, so.
No, sorry, not VMware. What was I saying? Hyper-V.
Hyper-V. I don't use it much.
Okay.
Because usually if I need a VM, I put it in Azure.
Okay.
So no.
Let's say if you wanted to test something with Python, would you do it on your local machine? Would you install it on your local machine, or would you?
Yeah. I mean, reinstalling Windows takes like half an hour now, so whatever.
That's a good point, actually.
No big
and
deal.
If you don't have any local data, we don't. Everything is on OneDrive for me anyway.
Yep.
Should be super easy, right? Perfect.
So we're going to talk about something called Azure Arc. Now, Azure Arc is not something we talk about much as developers because largely it's an infrastructure service. In fact, I don't even know if you call it an infrastructure service. It is a monitoring service, right? So Azure Arc is a way to manage resources anywhere, on-prem, in another cloud, doesn't really matter. So with Azure Arc, like we can do Stack HCI, we can do SQL Server, we can do Kubernetes, we can do servers. So if you've got a Kubernetes cluster that's running on-prem, or you've got an EKS cluster that's running over in AWS or wherever, you can manage them and see them from one pane of glass. And Azure Arc does a whole ton of different things. So you can push policies to the machines, you can manipulate them in all sorts of different ways. And yes, Brett, thank God it is Friday this week. This week has been the March of weeks, it feels like. Because what's today? March 249th, I think.
Yeah, I've also learned a new term called doom scrolling on Twitter.
Yeah, that's about all I've done since Tuesday afternoon. So Azure Arc is all about being able to do various things that you can do to Azure VMs and doing them elsewhere, right?
Yep.
So we're going to talk about Azure Arc for servers today, but there are lots of you can use them for different things: SQL, Kubernetes, whatever. So let's go look at servers, right? When we open one of these, and we're going to go through the whole process of doing this on my machine. When we get one of these, you'll notice we have things like security. So we can capture logs and we can push those logs up to Azure and have them integrated into Security Center, just like an Azure VM. We can push extensions to them, which is super cool. So if you want to enable certain extensions like PowerShell DSC, you can do that here. Log Analytics too, so you can do that, which is super cool.
Nice.
And so this VM, even though it's not running in Azure, it can kind of feel like it is, but you can manage it from a single place, which is super cool.
That's insane.
And then we have things like policies and update management, like if you want to handle pushing updates to these machines, if you want to handle policy, and policy is a whole, we could talk for days about Azure policy. If we want to push policy, we can create policies and push them to the machine for changing all sorts of different settings, firewall settings, kind of like a modern GPO, group policy object, kind of, not exactly, but you can do all sorts of different things with these. And of course, you get
just to clarify here, this is not just for local VMs. It can be any machine running on any cloud.
Yeah,
Rackspace,
it can be
AWS, Google Cloud, Azure.
As long as that
Local.
machine has outbound connectivity to the internet and specifically to our endpoints, it can be managed. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter what it is. So there's one of these for Windows. There's also one for Linux, right?
You made Brett Schroeder there.
Let me tell you.
GPOs.
I'm going to tell you a story, Brett. So when I first started at Microsoft, which was 2016, see you, Silicon. Orchid, thanks for hanging out. What's up, Cecil?
Hey, Cecilia's here.
Yep. So when I first started at Microsoft, I had, they gave me my laptop. It was like a Surface Book 3 or whatever. Or Surface Pro 3. I don't remember what it was called. It had a blue keyboard and I liked it. But it was domain joined and it had like tens of thousands of GPOs on it. And it was just awful. It was so slow. And now, like newer ones, you get a machine, you go to Best Buy or wherever you buy a laptop, and you sign in with Windows and with Azure AD, and it gets like 20 policies, and it's just infinitely better. So yeah, I'm not a fan of GPOs. I mean, it's definitely sort of an old day again, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, so Azure Arc. So you can push a bunch of policies. You can treat a VM or treat a machine. It doesn't have to be a VM. It could be a server, like a physical server running somewhere. Lets you treat them just like they're Azure machines for things like policy and whatever. But there's one extra thing that's included with it, which is what we're really interested about today. And that is they all have an instance metadata service that's running on them.
Oh, sweet.
And then...
You know what that means?
The more you dig into it, then you come to find that the way Azure Arc talks to the back end in Azure, right, from that machine, is it uses an instance metadata service and the managed identity on the agent to talk back to Azure AD. Or talk back to Azure, sorry, not Azure AD. Which got me thinking, can we use that hybrid managed identity service for our own purposes? And that's what we're going to do right now. So let's pull up our machine. So here's our machine, WinDev 2010 eval. I don't know why 2010. Okay. Maybe that's the Windows build. So that's this VM that we're running in right now. And if we go take our curl, it's kind of like a DevOps self-hosted agent, only it runs on any VM or on any machine that's available. It runs. It's not single purpose like a DevOps agent is. But in terms of
I think the difference with the DevOps was that it could bypass firewalls, which was a weird thing. Like it would create a tunnel between Azure DevOps and the machine. So I don't think you could block it via the firewall. I can't remember. I remember deploying it and being an interesting situation.
Yeah. So this machine is
it's all HTTP.
So this machine is under management in Azure Arc, and we're going to go call the instance metadata service and see if we get anything. If I can figure out how to paste into this VM. I'm in an enhanced session. I don't know. Whatever.
You might have to hand roll it.
I guess I'll have to write it on my own. Nah, I didn't have to do it before, but whatever. So invoke a REST method. We've got our headers. Metadata equals true. It's a get. I don't know if we even have to tell it that it's a get, but whatever. And we're going to call HTTP 169.254.169.254 slash metadata slash instance. Now, let's see what we get. It'll be interesting to see. Because it's still doing something. Whatever it is it's doing it.
Thinking about it. Give it a few seconds.
Did I not hit enter or something?
Where's my spinning wheel, right?
Okay, so it says unable to connect. It timed out, right? Because 169.254, that address is only routable within Azure, right?
Oh.
So instead, let me get my notes up here because.
Oh, so you knew this was going to happen.
I did know.
Can't believe that you led us into it. I fell in the trap.
I did know that this was going to happen. So instead of 169.254, we are going to use
URL
localhost. What is it? Localhost 403.42, and let's see if we get any data off of it this time.
Is that documented somewhere? Because people may be asking where you pull that
It is
IP address.
it is sort of documented in one place. So I will.
Go ahead.
So obviously we need to fix that now. You'll notice we got a response this time, and it says, "Oh, the API version is not specified. The supported versions are 2020 06 something."
One.
Is it 0601? So let's go fix our thing. I don't know why my word wrap doesn't seem to be working here. Let's see.
Is that the pain of working with a Windows virtual machine? That's a lot of red. Yeah, it is a lot of red, as you wildfire, but it's purposeful. We know why it's.
I know why it's red, and we're gonna go and fix it. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to make make this thing more readable, because I don't have Windows Terminal on here. Although Windows Terminal might be on here by default.
No, you have to download it from the
It is on
store.
here. No, it's here.
It is?
It is.
What?
It's a dev machine.
Sweet.
So. Oh, and there's my command from earlier. Even better. And I can zoom it in. So we need to add an API version here. And the API version is 2020 0601, right?
Oh, he's talking about my dapper outfit. Thanks, man. It's I don't know. It's not. How do you call it? It's not proper red.
I guess you two need to get together and figure out. You two need to get together.
Clothing?
Well, you two always sit around and talk about how great he looks. Meanwhile, here I am. Granted, I was telling my buddy this morning, it's always good to have like a really good-looking friend, and for me, that just happens to be almost all of my friends, relatively speaking. Okay, so we're going to call this, right? So we're going to call this with API version 2020-0601, and let's go ahead and do a convert to, is it convert to JSON, I think? Yep, there it is. So we're going to do a convert to JSON, and look, this is a VM, so this is still Windows 10 dev environment on my machine, running in Hyper-V. So there's nothing, there's no smoke and mirrors here. It's just a Windows VM. It's running locally. In fact, it's just got the username user. But when we call this endpoint, this localhost 40342, we see it's running in the public cloud, right? It's in East US. It's got a name. It's got all sorts of pieces of info. It's got a resource ID. It's got a resource group that it's a member of, right? It's Windows 10 Enterprise Evaluation. So this is Windows 10 workstation. This is not Windows Server. This is Windows 10 like you would have on your machine. Yeah. It's 19041. I have no idea what build number that is in terms of like release dates or anything, but you'll notice the subscription that it's a member of. So this looks just like our Azure VM, right?
It's crazy, right?
It is. It's super crazy. So following this logic, if we were to go and make a call to the identity endpoint instead of the instance endpoint, we should be able to get a token back, right?
Oh, drum roll.
Yep. So metadata, let's see. So that's metadata. Oops, let me click in the right thing. Identity. OAuth 2 token. OAuth 2 token. Get rid of the word instance here.
Do you need an API there?
We'll see what the API version is. The API version, yep, API version is correct. And then the one thing we have to add to the end is a resource. So, and resource is https management.azure.com. Now, let's see what we get this time.
Always scary when you know this by heart. Ooh, ampersand not allowed. Okay.
Oh, I guess I need quotes. Hang on. Or tick marks or whatever. Around our URI.
Is that it?
So it gets parsed correctly. Well, that's almost going to be it. You'll see a lot of red, but that's okay. We're going to fix that too. Oh, so the request went through correctly. So now we're unauthorized.
Ooh.
Now this is the big difference between doing MSI in Azure and doing MSI via Azure Arc on a remote machine, right?
Right.
So there's this one extra step that we have to go through. So let's go to the program data folder.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look in program data, we see this Azure Connected Machine Agent, right?
Oh.
And if we look in here and we look at
tokens,
well, let's go to the tokens folder. You'll notice the tokens folder. Oh, I don't have access to it because I am a local user, right? So because I do not have access to this folder, I cannot I can't get the basic. This is a VM that's running on my local machine.
No, Azure Wildfire says you can actually do Arc on a WSL
Oh,
instance.
nice. That's a good
That's
idea.
insane.
That's how we're going to do it on my machine. Now, thank you for mentioning that. So,
Stealing your thunder.
okay. So I don't have access to this folder, and this folder is where we get the data for the authorization header that we need. So let's open up Windows Explorer, and it says, "Oh, you don't have access." So let's do that. Let's get access, and you'll notice there's a file in there. So now we can see that file. Now we can read that file. And if we look at what's in that file, I don't actually know. Let's see.
Maybe we should do a session on WSL development soon, JP. Lots of people are excited about WSL.
I love WSL. That's all I use pretty much at home.
Set up a GUI for it and do some local development. Use the file system.
That's why
all the goodness.
That's why I'm not very good at PowerShell, because I don't really use it much anymore. I end up using WSL for everything. So our tokens directory is now empty. So let's go make our call again. And now when we go look in the tokens folder.
So what did you change there? Sorry,
I
was not paying attention.
Gave myself permissions to read this folder. Right.
Okay.
So now in this tokens folder, we've got this EE7. We've got a GUID, right? I hope you like GUIDs, because that's what we're going to be doing a lot of today. So we've got this GUID, and so that thing is still there. So let's go back, and we're going to make some small changes to our call here. So we have two headers that we need to add. One header is metadata true. The other header is authorization.
Okay.
So authorization.
Local?
It's basic. So authorization in this case is basic. And then we need to go get. So we're going to do a get content, and we're going to do it on C program data. Oops. I gotta get better at typing if we're going to do this. Program data, Azure Connected Machine Agent, tokens, and then I'm just going to get whatever's in there. We'll just do star.key.
Okay.
So that's our get content, and I think that should be everything that we need.
So this one will be running as your account, the one that you're currently logged in.
Nope.
And it's trying to get the key contents. Let's do it.
Correct.
Because I will have a question later.
So it's using my local Windows ACL to look in this folder and see what's going on. So let's try this.
Okay.
Oops.
And you're logged in with your local account, no Azure attached account or anything else. Just a local account.
No. This is just a local account. In fact, I'm not even signed. So if we do a who am I am logged in as WinDev 2010 eval WAC user.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not even a name.
So there's nothing. There's nobody here. There's nothing here exciting about me, right? So I haven't signed in as anything. So this is so we're getting the same thing. So we're still an unauthorized client. So let's make sure. Let me look at my command that I've written 48 times today to make sure that's still correct. And there we go.
So what do you change there? How do you work?
So I had to run it twice. Once to generate the key data, and then secondly to go get the key data, and then stick it in the thing. So now we have an access token. And because we can see the whole thing here, let's go take this access token. You'll notice the resources management.azure.com. Let's go take that, and let's go look at what's in it.
Once you generate that key, you don't have to ever do it again, correct?
No, you have to do it for every request.
So twice?
You essentially make the call twice.
Okay.
For every request. So if we go look at the token that was generated, you'll notice it's for management.azure.com. It was generated by my Azure AD tenant. So this is my specific. This is my tenant. It's in a group. So I've added this principal to a group, and there are a bunch of other pieces of information in here. We can use this access token to go talk to the Azure Management API. So back in our environment here. Let's do so we're gonna have to do this again, but this time we're gonna put the token in something. So let's run it. It's gonna bomb because we don't have the thing. So let's run it again, and this time we just want to get the token data out of it. So we're gonna do. So that's a convert to JSON, and then I think
get object. Or...
I should be able to do a .access token hanging off the end of this. Access token. Will that give us a token? No, it will not.
Oh.
That's okay. let's do it. We'll do it the other way. So convert to JSON. So we got our.
You have an extra bracket. Okay.
So we got our token. This is going to blow up. We run it again. Now our token should have something in it. So yeah. So token dot access token. Is that correct? No.
Huh.
There's some way to do it, and there's some way to do it. I don't know exactly how to do it in
PowerShell.
In PowerShell. Oh, you know what? Convert from JSON.
JSON. Oh.
So let's do a token, convert from JSON, and we'll just set it equal to itself. What's the worst thing that could happen? Token.access token. There it is, right? So now we've got our access token. So now let's go let's see. So we're going to do another invoke. We're going to go call the Azure, API directly.
Nice.
So
you need to remove the token equals, by the way. Don't override your token.
That's a good call. So we're going to use the token that we just created. I'm just going to clear all that because that's just kind of silly.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to invoke REST method for our headers this time because we're just making a normal Azure API call.
Authorization,
and it's bearer, and then token dot access token.
Very nice.
Okay, and then our URL. Is it URI or is going to be HTTPS management.azure.com, and we'll just do subscriptions just to see if we get anything back. And we need to go find us an API version to use on this one. So let me go see what the most recent ones are. Azure REST API version. Let's go see what they are. REST API reference.
That won't work either. You need a sub expression or a format string operation. Ooh.
Why is that?
That's what Brett said.
No, that's what I'm asking Brett. Why didn't that work? It's an access token.
I thought you were asking me.
It's a string.
Well, run it and see what happens, right? What's the worst thing that happens?
Well,
run it and then
I know I need an API version. So
how do you remember all the things? Somebody says like Dave Snowdia says, how do you remember all the things? I know. It annoys me because JP will remember these things and won't look up the documentation. So sometimes I'm like, how the hell do I know where to get it? You don't really feel like it, and then you don't really give.
I'll tell you.
Nothing.
I'll tell you. I don't know. I'll be honest. If something ever happens to Azure, I don't really know what I'll do because I won't have any other talent at that point. I mean, let's be clear. Talent is a sliding scale anyway. No, I don't know. To be honest, I guess it's just one of those things. You just kind of do it over and over again, and eventually you get to the point where you remember certain things that you always get hung up on historically, and I guess that's kind of the status that I'm in. So
that's right, CGT, and all that, so we can play Minecraft on our virtual machine.
That's right. We're doing all this for Minecraft, essentially.
Yeah.
So Azure Subscription API lets you read your subscriptions. They can't all be preview. That doesn't seem right. That's let's see, creating a new one. See, these are different. These are not the ones I was expecting. Oh, I see what you mean, Brett. Yeah. We will make sure that happens. Let's see. Am I in the right docs? Yeah, Azure REST API reference. I just need, let's just call it because it's going to tell me that I don't have the right. It's going to tell me that I don't have the right API version anyway. API version is required for all requests. Usually it tells me what they should be. Let's see. Azure REST API version. I guess we had one. I'll just go back to subscriptions over here. Subscription.
JP is a super genius. You're absolutely right. DT in the cloud.
Nope. Don't listen to him. Definitely.
I don't know if he's trolling or if he's genuinely saying that.
Nah, he's my buddy. If it's probably a little bit of both, to be quite honest. We'll use 2019-0301.
You found it.
2019.
So it's still a preview then?
Well, but it's kind of weird because this looks like it lets you create them. It doesn't actually let you see them, which seems kind of strange. I'll be honest. I don't fully understand, because we don't want to cancel, enable, or rename them. I just want to see them. So, yeah, I don't want like a billing API. Am I in the wrong API suite? What's going on here? I feel like it's something super obvious and I'm just totally missing it.
No Swagger?
Good point. I don't know. I don't think there is any. This is the Swagger. Azure REST API list subscriptions. How about that? Oh, I need to be in resource management. That's why. I was in the wrong. I was in the wrong one. Yep, that's API version 2020-0101. Okay, so API version 2020-0101, and then let's go do Brett's quick change too. He's saying that won't work. And he's correct. The access token is invalid. So instead,
he had to run it to believe it.
I believed. No, I believed him. I just wanted to make absolutely certain before.
He wanted to see the red. If I don't see red, I don't change it. There you go.
Oh, there we go. So it says, we have no subscriptions. Okay, but
sounds right.
But our access token was returned correctly. Right, so our access token, we could use it and query it correctly. It's just that we don't have any permission or anything, but that's whatever, right? So let's see. We'll do a.
This MSI doesn't have the right permissions.
No, it doesn't, because it doesn't really have any permission at this point, because we haven't really done anything to it, right? So we can call the APIs. We can get access tokens for things like Azure Management. Now, how do we do it? And I'm going to do it on my machine. And like AZ Wildfire said, let's do it in Windows. Let's do it in Windows Subsystem for Linux, just so that we can see it work for both Linux and Windows. So,
we're not going to run our app now.
Yeah, we could run our app. Let's go run our app and see what happens.
There you go.
Good call. Let's go paste.
Because that was the whole point, right? Being able to prove nothing's worked like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go run our app and see. So where was our app? It was here. Let's open up Explorer and go get our app. It's in Pub, Azure Reader. Copy this over. Oops. Paste it in here. All right. And we'll just run. Oh, let's run terminal again so we can zoom.
Yep.
All right, so let's go over here to the desktop. Oh, our app is not going to run, because remember, we have our 2 extra steps that we have to take. So no, our app is not going to run. That was the whole point. So if we try to run this now, Managed Service Identity is not going to work, because the code, unless they've updated the code to use it, the code doesn't use this localhost endpoint. And of course, there we go. Managed Identity Credential Authentication is unavailable. No Managed Identity endpoint was found. Right.
That's expected, right? Because we don't have the custom credential token credential.
Correct.
Right.
So because of that, we can't use our code as is. Right.
Disappointing.
So
That's fine.
So we're gonna do 2 things. Good. See you later, Brett. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Enjoy your pizza.
Enjoy your pizza and beer, or food and beer. I'm jealous because it's
now you're making me hungry.
It's only 12:30 here. If I start drinking pizza and beer, I'm gonna be in trouble. So we've kind of got 2 different things we can do, and what I'd like to do is actually create a new managed identity credential that is a hybrid managed identity credential or whatever. But first, let's go onboard a machine so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so let's get into the Azure portal. So we're back here at Azure Arc, right? Oops, let me zoom out a little bit, zoom in a little bit. So we're here at Azure Arc. This is called Azure Arc for servers. You can come into your Azure subscription, you can search for Azure Arc. Oops, Azure Arc. And you'll see Azure Arc here. You'll see servers. We're going to do servers, so let's do that. Now, these are 2 that I already onboarded. One of them, of course, was the VM we were just in. So let's add a new one. And if you're doing a whole ton of them, which you normally would in, say, a broad management thing, there's sort of a separate set of instructions, because you're going to onboard a bunch of machines, but we're only going to onboard one, and so we can sort of see what happens interactively. So let's go generate a script. And it says 2 things you need. Access to 443 for the outbound, for the specific URLs that we're going to connect to for the agent, and then local admin. Just local admin on the box, right?
Perfect.
And then you need a resource group in Azure. That's it. Nothing special, right? So let's create one. So I've already got one here called Arc MSI, a resource group, where we're going to put this. And I've only done Windows one, so let's try it with Linux and see how we like it. So we got our region.
Ooh,
our region is East US. I don't have a proxy here, so we're not going to worry about the proxy. We don't have one. Tags, we can set some of these if we want. So the data center is HQ. City is Charlotte. State.
Seems like you've done this before.
I think I have. And US. All right. And then we can add extra tags if we want. Cool. So now we're going to go get the script. So here's our script. Really 3 commands.
Nice.
We're going to go get a shell script from the internet and then run it on sight unseen. What could possibly go wrong, right? So we're going to go get a script, which we can always go look at the script because it's out on GitHub. We're going to get a script. We're going to install the script. And then we're going to tell the agent to connect up into Azure. So let's go do this one first. Let me get my terminal up.
So that's for the WSL stuff now, right?
Yep, so this is WSL. So this is my, let's clear this. So this is my WSL that's running locally. If we do like an LSB release, you'll see it's Ubuntu 2004. And this is running WSL. So let's get into home.
It's WSL2, right?
Yep, this is WSL2. Oops, let me clear the screen, make it easier to read. I think that should be big enough. So first thing, we've got to take our command to go and get. So it's going to go get. Let's see. We've got a bunch of things came out, but ultimately in my home directory we now have install Linux azcm agent. I see. Hang on, there are a couple questions. I just want to pull them back. Ever used a beer can as an ashtray? And then you did.
And then mix the cans.
Mix the can. Ooh. Oh my God. Well, so I've only done part of that once, which is use a can as an ashtray and then accidentally drink from it later. I've never mixed them together though. But it was only once, and it was very quick, and I was like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm going to die." It was.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It was pretty awful. Smoking's bad enough. Drinking the output of smoking is even worse. So we have we've got our file here. So let's go see what our next command is. Our next command is to just install the agent. So let's run that and go and install the agent. Okay, so it's a sudo. Okay, so putting some packages, adding some apt repositories. Run. Still doing more, pulling some other things, pulling the agent from our Ubuntu places. Something failed. Okay. So it installed the post-installation script returned exit status 1. So let's see. Let's see what happened here. So creating system has not been booted with systemd as an init, so it can't operate, which I was kind of wondering about because this is going to try to run on startup, and since there's no systemd in WSL, I was kind of curious of how that would work, and I guess now we know what's going to happen. So we probably have to start the service on our own. So let's go look in here. Is it service list? No, there's a way to list these services. Systemctl list services. Okay. Let's go see what our services are. I don't care about specific services, to be quite honest. I just want to see a list. List units. I want to essentially see services that I can start. That's really what it comes down to. Let's see. Systemctl list units. Oops, units. Oh, okay. So I guess that's true because I get the same thing because you're not using. Anyway, so let's try. Uh-oh, somebody's upset.
Oh, I can hear that in the background.
Yeah, I know. What was the name of it? azcm agent. Let's see if we can start it. Oops. Systemctl service. Is it start maybe? azcm agent. Nope, still unknown. All right, I'm gonna go run let's go run the thing here and just see if this command's even gonna work. Yep, it's a multi-line one. There it goes. So let's see. Oh, you must be root to execute user bin.
Sudo.
Yeah. So let's go do that. And you'll notice that most of what we put into the, most of what we chose is what really drives this script. Here, let me clear this, because it'll probably make it a little bit easier. So like the tags that we put in were just the ones that we typed in the UI. You know, we've got our subscription ID, nothing too crazy. So let's go run this. Oops. So now it's going to connect, and then I will sign in, and that sign in is kind of the main link that happens at the very end. So
right.
It says it's going to take a few minutes to complete. Sometimes it takes longer. Blah blah blah. It looks like it can't get DNS. Oh, that's fun.
Did Azure Wildfire lie to us?
I think maybe. I think that is the service that needs to be running. HIMDSD start. No. Oh, so, oops. Start. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work on WSL.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's okay. Let's go do it.
Azure.
I will come back around to it later next week. Let's do it with Windows instead, and then at least we can do one of the other ones. So let's go back. We're going to call this one Windows instead. The tags should all stay the same, so everything there is the same. And then here, we've got essentially the same script, only this time it's a PowerShell script. So let me get a PowerShell window open here, which we can do in Windows Terminal, although it needs to be administrator, so let's just open up a normal one. So here's a normal window, PowerShell. Wait for my PowerShell stuff to load. Let's clear all that out. Okay. So put this over here on the side. We'll get our script over here on the other side. So the first thing we need to do is download the package. So let's go download our package. Okay, so our package has been downloaded. Now we're going to go and install the thing, and it's going to spit out a installation log. So if something goes wrong, we can go look at that installation log and see. Sadly, I forgot to change my directory, so we're doing this all in System 32, but whatever, it's fine. So that's all there now. Cool, cool. In fact, let's go look at the installation log just to make sure nothing blew up. It's kind of long, so maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Damn, that's a lot.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. So last thing we're going to do is we're going to go run this command, and this is the command that actually goes and connects the VM. And it looks like it installed, because otherwise this would have blown up and not worked. So it says down here, to sign in, use a web browser to open the page, device login, and we're going to use this code. So let's go over and log in. So that's Microsoft.com/device login. Put our code in here. I am already signed in, so I'm going to sign in. Now it says I've signed into the connected machine agent, and then this has got our PowerShell script's going to update here in just a sec. And then our VM, my actual physical machine sitting here under my desk, will now be connected. So let's go back to the portal. We've added a server, so we can close this, and let's look at our Azure Arc.
Look at our servers to see if it's there.
Let's go see if it's here yet. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
So there's my machine, right? See? So this is
connected.
This is the name of my desktop. Windows 10 Enterprise, which is a supported OS, which is awesome. OS version, agent version, all the tags we put in, whatever. Everything's here, right? So this is super cool because now everything's here. We could push policy and do all that sort of stuff, but I don't want to do that because I don't care about policy. What I care about is having managed identity right here next to me, sitting on my box. So now that we've got this running, let's get our PowerShell window back up. Don't need this anymore. Let's go get our PowerShell back up and going here. Get zoomed in. So now we've got PowerShell up again, and we're going to go run our commands again. The same commands that we ran on our other machine over here, we're going to run them here too. Yep. In fact, nice. in an effort for simplicity, I'm going to see if I can just get them out of history and just run them again instead of having to go and type all those out again. I'm going to try to do them myself. So here is our. Let's go get this command for. Here's our command for our metadata. Let me just grab this. Take this over here. So this is our metadata command. You'll notice, again, we're doing localhost 4342. This is my machine. We're not SSH'd anywhere. You notice here's my machine name that we had earlier. We know the agent's running. So let's see if we can connect. And we can. So we see everything we saw before. It's Windows 10 Enterprise. Yep. It's got an Azure Resource ID. Everything about this is the same as our other VM. And then if we go back into, let's see, program data, and Azure Connected Machine Agent, we should have a tokens folder in here. We do. I don't have permission to it, so let's get permission to it. And that's really the key. That's how you secure this, is whoever has permissions to this tokens folder, this program data Azure Connected Machine Agent tokens folder, this is how you control who has access to request a token. What processes on your device, what users can call this endpoint. It's all driven by who has rights to read this folder. Because if you can't read this folder, you can't get the key data out of there, right?
Okay.
So let's go back and let's go get our token script. I've got one right here. We'll just use this one. So that is management.azure.com. Okay, so here's our token getter script. Remember, the first time it's going to fail, the second time it should work. Although this has got a typo in it, so I'm going to go fix the typo first. Man, I'm telling you, let me tell you, 2-year-olds, I don't know where they find the volume, but that kid is one of the loudest children I've ever seen in my entire life. So it's saying there is no key because this is our first request. So now we run it again. Yep. Now we run it again, and there we go. Now we have an access token, just like we had before.
Nice.
So we can get an access token. We can do things with that access token, right? So now we can go call the Azure REST API, whatever. Remember, however, that this user is not me. This user is the machine as a whole. So if we look at this, I still need to grant permissions. Because right now we have essentially the only permission we have is to call the Azure Arc service, which the service itself needs to talk back to Azure. So we have don't worry, if that door wasn't locked, he'd be on here already. He'd be in here screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy!" So as soon as I walk out of here to go get lunch, I'm sure I'll get plowed over. So we don't have any permissions yet. Right, so that's sort of the last big thing, and I think the next show or some show here soon, we're going to go and extend the Azure SDK, the Azure Identity SDK, to use this. But we have an application, we've got a service principal, like we talked about in the very beginning. But what we don't have yet is any permissions. We've assigned no permissions to this machine, right?
So if we were to run, let's say we change the token credential to use the local account or the local MSI, right? Would we need to change the way that behaves in order to be able to do that kind of a double call?
We do. So that's what we're going to change. Right. We're going to change the behavior to both change the endpoint and change the behavior. So my machine is called JPDA X8930. Let's go look at my subscription and see if I can give reader rights here. So here's my subscription. We're going to manage IAM. We're going to add a new role, add a role assignment. And we're going to make this reader. Let's see if I show up in here. And I do. So here's my machine. So you don't even have to jump into PowerShell or CLI to go find your service principal like I did yesterday. Instead, it's just here and it's available. So now this machine has reader access to my subscription. So just by putting in the name of the VM, which is essentially the name of the service principal that was created, just by adding this here, when we save this, now we can read our subscription.
Oh.
The other thing that's cool about this is, like, let's say we had a storage account.
Yep.
And we wanted to read blobs that were in a storage account, right? So if I come here and go to IAM, we want to add, so this is just a normal storage account to store files, blobs, whatever. We go and add this, and let's say I want storage blob data reader, so we can read the blobs. Our machine should also show up here for assignment. So now this machine can read blobs, which is super cool. If we want to do Azure SQL, this is probably one of the more common things that we'll see. So if I've got a SQL database right now that's running on-prem, if I want that SQL database, I might be using a service account to connect to it. So if I want to go run and connect to a database, we can use Azure AD for connecting to SQL, and we can use that with the service principal. So here, see if I can get this to load up. So here's SQL. Here's that same SQL database, right? Create user JPDA X8930 from external provider. Right? Run this command and Bueller, maybe? Is it going to work? I'm on pins and needles.
Wait a minute. It says error.
Oh, it says I have to. Oh, that's because I need to. Because I need to reconnect personally. So let's disconnect. Let's see. Let's reconnect. Reconnecting. Let's go try to run this again.
So Simon Engineering saying, but that's still hitting an internal facing endpoint though, right?
Correct.
Not express route or similar. Yeah.
Yep. This is only hitting a local endpoint, essentially that's running on the agent that's in there, right?
Yep.
So it's an agent that's running on my machine. If we open up services, can you zoom into Task Manager? I don't even know if you can do that. Can you do that?
Not anymore, I think.
No, you can't. Can't zoom.
Probably need to use Windows Zoom.
Yeah, magnifier. Although magnifier usually blows everything up, but
breaks everything.
In here, we should have a list of services, and one of those services should be our Azure.
Oh yes, the connection to Azure SQL is over public internet. That is correct.
Oh no, that's true. Oh yeah. No, that's true. Or it could use ExpressRoute. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't.
I thought you could do VNet. You don't have to use ExpressRoute, right?
Well, you could use it. Well, if you're coming from on-prem, then you got to get there somehow. So you could VPN. You could VPN to a VNet and use an endpoint, or you could do ExpressRoute. In fact, In fact, my connection is going through corporate ExpressRoute because I'm VPN'd into work, and then my VPN connection goes up through ExpressRoute to get to that VM. So to that SQL DB. So I'm actually connecting to that SQL DB through ExpressRoute. So yeah, the SQL DB has to be available to your network because that is still running in Azure. But the authentication we're using to get a token, that's all happening locally, and I have no secrets that I have to manage in order to make that work. He's
got no skeletons in his closet.
Who?
No secrets. You.
Oh,
you said you have no secrets. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, somewhere in here, I don't know what the name of the service is. Somewhere in here, there's a service running, and that service that's running is the thing that will ultimately that's the localhost 40342 that we're calling to get that token from our PowerShell script. That's the thing that it is. So, anyway,
right, let's do it.
So, essentially for now we're done because we've only got 10 minutes left. I don't have time to go write a new token provider. So what we're going to do probably sometime next week. I don't think it'll be Monday because we're going to have a guest on Monday, but maybe by next Friday. Back to our code that we wrote originally, our super basic, simple go and get my Azure resource code. We're going to create a new derived hybrid managed identity credential. So something like public hybrid managed identity credential, which is going to derive from, I wonder if we can derive from managed identity, although we probably don't want to because that's going to break. So we'll derive from token credential, and we are going to build this next week and make our app work to get access tokens from the hybrid instance management service. I'm super pumped about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to implement these two methods.
We'll do these next week, and then we're covering multi-tenancy as well.
Oh, that's right. We're doing multi-tenancy. So yeah, maybe we'll do both of these on Monday because we'll have a little bit more time. Yeah. And multi-tenancy we could talk about for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 hours, 2 years.
God, there's so much there.
So
multi-tenancy.
We'll find a good place. But if you're building apps for other people, it is not using Hybrid Connection Manager Bolt, by the way. If you were building apps for other people, like you want to sell your app, or you want to log in users from anywhere, or you want to log in users from the entirety of the Azure AD ecosystem, if you want to do that, that's what multi-tenancy is all about. So
Yep.
And yeah, Bolt, the whole thing we're doing today is local managed identity. So if you want to get managed identity locally, that's what we're doing today. So we're just using Azure.
Locally and outside Azure.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be in Azure.
Doesn't have to be in Azure. Yeah, if you're a developer, the local side is really fun. But if maybe we'll do this in AWS next week too to test our app. How about that?
Yes.
By then, somebody will have approved my stuff. So anyway, thanks for joining with us. Thanks for hanging out. I think we're sort of on the cusp of something really cool. If you have any questions, issues, concerns, personal attacks, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. You see our Twitter names there next to us. Thanks for following us, by the way, Davey Wavy. And we'll be back on Friday. Hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Feel free to drop us a note if you have any identity questions or .NET questions or whatever. We'll be back Monday, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. Eastern to talk about multi-tenancy and building some more on this. So
yeah, I've also added the YouTube channel, so it's aka.ms425. So YouTube. So everything that we put here is going to be available on YouTube, and I think JP will be working on a blog post for this one. So we'll wrap it in a nice bow. So if you want to follow the steps on how to set it up, then there will be a blog post there, 425. So dev.to 425. So we try to get you guys the right secure software no matter where you are. So make sure to follow.
Cool. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you on the other side.
Thanks, everyone.